The alliance of 32 nations is facing a crucial test of its long-term commitment, and one man's presence could change the course of history. Will Trump's unconventional approach pull NATO into the West Asia conflict, or will the alliance hold strong? We will dive into the details, exploring the implications for global security, the future of NATO, and of course, the world's fragile balance of power. Take a look at the details.
Leaders from all 32 NATO member countries are set to gather in the Netherlands' Hague for the annual NATO summit scheduled for June 24th and 25th. Among them is US President Donald Trump, marking his first appearance at the summit since returning to the White House for a second term. So why does this summit matter? Why is the world watching so closely?
For America and her allies, celebrations throughout the country at the end of the greatest war in history.
A relic of the Second World War, NATO, or the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, came up in 1949. The world was divided into two parts, with the Iron Curtain having fallen in the middle of Europe, dividing America-led West and the USSR-led Eastern Bloc. Since then, NATO has steadily expanded, adapting to new global threats while sticking to its founding principle. At the heart of NATO lies Article 5, the cornerstone of the alliance. It declares that an attack on one member is an attack on all, allowing for collective military or non-military response. Remarkably, Article 5 has only been invoked once in NATO's history, in the wake of the 9/11 terror attacks on the United States. Fast forward to today, and the spotlight at The Hague isn't just on unity, it's on economics too. Trump's relationship with NATO has always been complicated. During his first term, he repeatedly criticized the alliance, once even calling it obsolete. President Trump is reigniting his push for NATO countries to dramatically ramp up defense spending to 5% of GDP, up from today's baseline of 2%. But here's the twist. Trump insists this target applies to all allies but not the US, which already spends roughly about 3.4% of its GDP on defense. His blunt message? Other countries must pay their fair share, especially calling out Spain and Canada as persistently underpaying.
We've been supporting NATO so long. In many cases, I believe paying almost 100% the cost. So I don't think we should, but I think that the NATO countries should, absolutely. Spain's been a very low payer. They were always a very low payer. They were either good negotiators or they weren't doing the right thing. I mean, I think Spain has to pay what everybody else has to pay. Spain has been notorious for low pay. You know who else was a low payer, just about the lowest? A place called Canada. Because Canada said, why should we pay when the United States will protect us free?
NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has proposed a more nuanced compromise, 3.5% for core defense and 1.5% for infrastructure and cyber, aiming for total parity with Trump's call, but only if all 32 members agree.
At the summit in The Hague, I expect allied leaders will agree to spend 5% of GDP on defense. It will be a NATO-wide commitment and a defining moment for the alliance. There are two parts to this new defense spending plan. 3.5% will be invested in our core military requirements, while the rest will go towards defense and security-related investments, including infrastructure and building industrial capacity. 5% is not some figure plucked from the air. It's grounded in hard facts. The fact is, we need a quantum leap in our collective defense.
NATO is a means for the United States to project power around the world. It initially was set up in 1949 so that the United States could project power in Europe. It's very much in America's interest in a militarized imperialist world to keep NATO. So Trump makes a lot of statements. What his real goal is not to pull out. His real goal is to force the Europeans to spend a lot more for their own quote-unquote defense.
This is one front for Trump versus NATO, but it's not the only one. The ongoing Russia-Ukraine war looms large over this year's summit, with the conflict now entering its third year. NATO's support has been critical. Since 2014, NATO's support for Ukraine has deepened, providing military training, intelligence, and non-lethal support. NATO, although not a sole cause, but plays a significant role in the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The war that has been going on from 2022 has been only worsened, with Russia now controlling major parts of Ukraine. But Trump's stance on Ukraine has raised eyebrows. During his campaign, he repeatedly suggested he could end the war in 24 hours, and then came his fiery on-camera clash with Zelensky at the Oval Office.
And your men are brave, but they have used our military.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no
answering on
position
this
to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly
this.
what you're doing.
You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influenced.
We're going to feel very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the
bad
very
position,
beginning
and
of
he
the
happens
war.
to be right about
From the
it.
very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a good
Brown,
position.
I
You don't
was
have the cards right now. With us, you start having
not
cards.
playing
But
cards.
right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
You're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're
I'm
gambling
the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're gambling with World War III.
What do you think
You're
about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
A clash that reminds us of the infamous war of words between Trump and NATO Secretary Jens Stoltenberg in 2018 at NATO summit.
Germany is just paying a little bit over 1%, whereas the United States, in actual numbers, is paying 4.2% of a much larger GDP. They pay billions of dollars to Russia, and now we have to defend them against Russia.
You know, NATO is an alliance of 29 nations, and there are sometimes differences and different views and also some disagreements. And the gas pipeline from Russia to Germany is one issue where allies disagree. But the strength of NATO is that despite these differences, we have always been able to unite around our core task to protect and defend each other.
But how can you be together when a country is getting its energy from the person you want protection against or from the group that you want protection?
Because you understand that when we stand together, also when dealing with Russia, we are stronger. I think what we have seen is that...
No, you're just making Russia richer.
Well,
you're not dealing with Russia, you're making Russia richer.
So I think that even during the Cold War, NATO allies were trading with Russia. Then there have been disagreements about what kind of trade arrangements we should go
I think
into.
trade is wonderful. I think energy is a whole different story. I think energy is a much different story than normal trade.
The tensions didn't end there. Zelensky's invitation to this NATO summit reportedly sparked fresh debate within the alliance. Some leaders feared his presence could provoke Trump again. But ultimately, Zelensky is attending, determined to secure more aid and firm commitments from NATO partners. His appearance is being seen as a direct message to the US president. Trump's latest escalation of bombing Iran's nuclear infrastructure has dragged several NATO countries into regional flashpoints.
A short time ago, the U.S. military carried out massive precision strikes on the 3 key nuclear facilities in the Iranian regime: Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. Everybody heard those names for years as they built this horribly destructive enterprise. Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated. Iran, the bully of the Middle East, must now make peace. If they do not, future attacks will be far greater and a lot easier.
While NATO traditionally limits its operations to the North Atlantic region, these developments have revived debate over Article 5, the alliance's collective defense clause. On the other hand, thousands of American troops remain stationed across bases in the Middle East. US has a sizable force in the Middle East, with nearly 40,000 troops in the region. As the US makes a direct entry into the war, it remains to be seen how the rest of the NATO countries walk the tightrope. The Russia-Ukraine war shows no signs of resolution. On the other hand, the US is now face to face with Iran in direct military confrontation. In such an unpredictable geopolitical environment, questions arise over the alliance's long-term commitment in this volatile situation. The chances of Trump pulling NATO into Middle East conflict are higher than ever.